Hmm? Ah!
No, I hate this overpriced bullshit, son of a piece of shit.
You're just not nimble enough, but you'll get there one day. But until then, Princess Daphne is still mine.
You know, whatever. I'm still top, I'm centipede, and Big Nut.
You sure about that?
Sure about what? Oh, no!
751,300 points.
That's impossible.
Who's MadMax?
Better than you.
Hey everybody, I'm Rima.
And I'm Shawn.
And this is Strange Indeed, a podcast dedicated to the show Stranger Things.
Today we'll be covering the first episode from Season 2, titled Chapter 1, MadMax. So Rima, it's bright and early. We're doing this, what we just said before. Mornings are for coffee, contemplation, and Stranger Things.
No other way that I'd like to start my day than with a brand new episode of Stranger Things. And what an episode.
Oh, it was great. I'm excited. I mean, it just makes me so much more excited for Season 2.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. It was so hard not to keep watching and just like totally ditch this whole recording thing today and just keep watching. Okay. Well, before we get started, we've got a quick word from our sponsor. This week's episode is sponsored by Freshly. So Freshly, if you don't already know, it's a meal delivery service. They send fully prepared meals that are fresh for the week. They do all of your meal prep, so there's no shopping, no chopping, and no cleanup. I hate all of those things, so that's wonderful for me. So it's a great alternative to eating takeout, which we know is not very healthy for us, and it saves you from having to cook up meal kits. So all you have to do is you just heat it and eat it, and each fresh meal is ready in about 3 minutes. I mean, you cannot go wrong with that. Talk about a time saver. So they're already prepared for you, and you feel good after eating them. So it's easy, it's convenient. I recently had the grilled chicken risotto with butternut squash, and it was so good. That butternut squash was like the yummiest butternut squash I think I've ever had. I've tried to cook it on my own, and I must have really messed that up because it wasn't nearly as good. So it was super yummy, and it was so filling. It was almost too much. I had to like almost cut it in half and save it for later because you get so much in these meal kits. So it was super yummy. It's a great option for everyday eating, and it tastes really good. There's lots of really good spices and flavor. They're not bland at all. So they're always fresh, never frozen. They're 100% all natural, no artificial flavors or preservatives, no refined sugars, and no gluten. A lot of that's really important to me. I like knowing that I'm eating good things and not eating like junk. So that's really important to me. So it's super easy to order these meals. You just go to freshly.com, choose your meals for the week from the rotating menu, and they'll send them to you in a refrigerated box. Super cool. The promo code is STRANGE. It'll give all you guys listening 2 weeks of chef-cooked dinners for $40 off. You get $20 off your first order and $20 off your second order. What a great deal. Thank you, Freshly.
Yeah, thanks, Freshly.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait another minute, Shawn. Are you ready to jump in
Let's
to our
do
top
it.
5? Let's talk about this episode. So, I'm going to start because I can't wait. I have to have to talk about this episode. I'm just bursting. I feel like it's oozing out of my pores to talk about this episode. So I'm going to start out mine, and I'm numbering this week, guys. My number 5 is, do we have another 11? Or should we say 8?
Oh, yes.
I mean, How cool. Oh my gosh. Stranger Things is certainly carrying on their awesome tradition of cold opens. I talked about it a lot in our discussions of season one, how awesome these cold opens are and how they really draw you in. So we're not in Hawkins during this cold open. They tell you right away, at least they're not leaving you in mystery as to where they're at. We're in Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania. They at least give us a year, a heads up in case you didn't already know. We jumped a year ahead. Season one was 1983. We're now in 1984. We got this police chase. Looks like something happened. Was it a bank robbery? I
Yeah,
thought
so
I heard
that's
it.
what it looked like to me, is a bank
Yeah,
robbery or something like that.
yeah, because there's like an alarm going off. There people wearing these masks, freaky Halloween masks and stuff. Got this super intense girl sitting in the passenger seat, and it's like she knows. It's like she just like go right, and she's just like steel faced, no emotion, and it's like she knows exactly where to go. And I mean, my attention was drawn to her immediately. Like, who is this girl and what's going on? Um, and then as the cops are chasing them, they think they get away. Cops find him again. Um, and she does this, I don't know what it is, this thing, and she makes that bridge look like it collapses or falls and causes the cops to crash, and it really didn't happen. She made him think that it happened. And then her nose starts bleeding, and you see that tattoo on her arm. I'm like, what the hell? But I mean, it makes sense, right? Because I mean, 11 couldn't be like the only one. We know that Dr. Brenner had been experimenting on kids, or that something had been happening. But
Yeah, the numbering system doesn't start at 11.
exactly, yeah. I mean, like 1 to 10, or 1 to 11, 1 to 12. Who knows how many of these kids there are? But we only saw 11
Hmm.
in the first episode. We didn't see any other kids, rooms like 11's. We didn't see any other children around 11. There wasn't like a daycare going on at this facility. We
That girl
only
did
saw
look
her.
that girl did look quite a bit older too than 11. I mean, she was like late
Exactly.
teens.
Yeah, because I think 11 was she was what, like 11 or 12, I guess, last year, and this girl looked easily, I thought, like teenage years.
Hmm.
She didn't look. I don't know. I'm not good with ages or predicting ages, but I found her fascinating. I really liked her look. I thought she just had this really fascinating look. Um, I like that whole code open, and just this whole new mystery, or expanding, I guess, on the whole mystery that we have, is who is this girl? Do you have any thoughts
Yeah, it
on
was
her?
cool. So you see the bank heist. And I think we had talked about it earlier, that, or a story where they talked about this was going to kick off in a different city. And as you're watching it, you do get that sense of like, oh my gosh, am I watching a different show? Did I click play on the wrong thing? Am I
Mm-hmm.
watching Narcos or something instead of Stranger Things? And so you're following this, and I got the same sense with the girl. Like the first time she says turn right, you can just be like, oh, well, she just understands the city.
Mm-hmm.
But as she keeps saying it and weirder things are happening, you kind of start thinking like, okay, like, the first note I wrote is like, oh, is this another number 11? Like, is this another person with power? And, they go, it's like, turn here, there's a tunnel. It's like, okay, something's weird here. And she's clenching her fists and she says, boom. And the tunnel collapses. I was like, oh, she has like powers just like 11.
Mm-hmm.
But not quite. There's something different about her powers, because
Yeah.
you see the police cars crash together, and the guys ask like, "Well, why'd you stop?" And he freaks out and looks like, "Oh shoot! Like, what the hell did I just see?"
Yeah.
And I don't know if as you're talking about it, like I'm trying to think like, do these numbers mean anything? Because at first when I saw L with 011, I thought maybe they're using like a binary system, so like she was
Mm-hmm.
actually like the third one or something like that.
Right.
But, that theory is obviously not true with this, because we see she's 008. But I wonder if, again, these numbers have some representation, because Elle and her have completely different powers. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't look like she was moving things with her mind or anything like that. She just kind of had more of a ability to see things maybe in the future, or, she somehow had more control of the mind. And I know whenever they talk about like army people and they discharge you because of going crazy, you get a Section 8. So, and it's almost like she made that guy go crazy for a moment. So I wonder if that has any relation to what it is or not. So I'm curious if 11, if anything significant about her number is that. So like each one is a different type of, the number means something that they're trying to accomplish.
Very good thoughts.
Could be
Yeah, I don't.
way overthinking it, but just kind of like, oh, well, she made that dude go crazy for a second, so maybe that's a relation, or maybe they just like, oh, well, let's just pick 8.
Right. Right.
the Duffer Brothers will listen and be like, oh yeah, totally, we meant to do that. 8 because it's crazy number, and Crazy Eights, the card game, totally same thing. She makes people go crazy.
Right.
They look at each other like, hey, write that down. Season 3, we got to pick a number and have it mean something.
Well, we don't know, right? We don't know if it's just like a numerical order of these children that they have done these experiments, or whatever it is these children are that they're developing as these weapons. But also, as you were talking about that and the possibility of that, the meaning behind number 8, and this girl not quite having the same powers, I'm wondering if whatever they are doing to these kids in these experiments, or developing these kids, are these powers maybe more individualistic, kind of like an X-Men thing,
Yeah, good point.
where it's like they like us. I mean, I don't have any special superpowers, but if somebody goes and does experiments, some kind of weird experiment on me, does it bring out something in your subconscious that you're not aware of, and it brings it out in you? Are they individualistic, like being a mutant?
Rima, your superpower is podcasting. If they did experiments, you'd be a super podcaster.
Woohoo, where's my cape? I want a cape. Yeah. So I don't know, that just as you were talking, that just made me think that, she does. It was pretty awesome power, and she was just so smooth about it. I loved that whole little effect where she just kind of takes her hand real slow and just, like you said, says boom.
Yeah.
And makes it like the bridge collapse, and it looked real. We
Oh,
didn't know at the
yeah.
time, and and obviously that cop thought so too. But I wonder if they're just individualistic, like whatever they're doing to these kids, that it's, bringing it out in them, like the X-Men, and mutants. Because isn't it like in the X-Men that, you're born with it, but they don't always come out right away. Like you go through something, like maybe puberty triggers it, or you have some sort of traumatic experience that happens in life, and it brings it out in you, and it reveals your superpowers or whatever it is that you have.
I think like the gene gets activated if something like that, like puberty, tragic event, or just finally it's time. You go through mutant puberty. I don't know. It's I read it in science class, I think.
Right.
And then you'll grow claws out of your arms.
Right. Or turn blue like Mystique. I like her. She's super cool.
Teacher, is this a superpower? No, you're just a weirdo.
Right. Awesome. Good thoughts. Yeah. Did you have anything else to say about that?
No, I just had a few little tidbits on it, but yeah, it's a great opening, and I thought the quality of it was good. Like, that was a really good police chase. For being just like, I think that might be all we see from Pittsburgh potentially, and if that's all they did, like, that's pretty good quality, and it seemed really good for, like, you think of Netflix quality, it's definitely up in its game.
Absolutely. It was really put together well, and it seemed believable. It seemed like a believable chase. It wasn't because you really thought you lost him there for a minute, and then they ended up, they think they're safe, and then they find them, and it seemed like a pretty believable chase, except for the part where, of course, you have this mysterious girl making them think a bridge has collapsed, or a little overpass, whatever that was. Maybe it wasn't a bridge, but whatever it was that they like the tunnel. She said there was a tunnel. So whatever that wasn't exactly something you'd see every day, but it seemed pretty believable. It was a great opener, really well put together, and I hope we get to see more of who this person is, this girl. I'm intrigued with her. I just loved everything about her. I thought she was super cool. So awesome. What's your number 5?
All right, so for my number 5, I'm going to jump in. We kind of talked about it last week a little bit because it's really heavy in the trailer. I want to talk about the arcade. So the boys are going through, they're getting their haul together. They're getting coins. Lucas, he went out and mowed a lawn, so he made some money. Dustin just is digging through his mom's couch. And I don't think we saw his mom last year, but she seemed pretty much exactly what I thought his mom would look like,
Yep, exactly.
Not like super creepy like the It mom, but, kind of, like has the cat, little overbearing, but like it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, Dustin's not going to get in any trouble.
Yep.
Mike is super not concentrating on the hall at this point. He's on something else, so he forgets about it. So he runs into Nancy's room and steals her quarters, which we find out later he gets in trouble for. And then Will, we see a little bit of him as well. I think his mom he didn't really say how he got his haul. But, they're in the arcade. It's a great, like, experience for a kid. I was more in the 90s, but I'm sure kids in the 80s had it just as much fun with it. I remember
Mm-hmm.
going in and it's like, oh, it's 4 quarters. Or if you use a $5 bill, you get 25 quarters. You get an extra
Woohoo!
one, or you get an
Yeah.
extra 4 or 5. And then, you could spend like hours there and the time would just fly by. And I know me, like it seems like these guys are there all the time. And I'm not sure what games cost in the 80s, if it was a quarter a play or 50 cents a play. I know mine was more 50 cents a play. And now
Mm-hmm.
I think they're like a buck 50. Like it's expensive to play video games.
It is.
But you get the whole backstory. Like these kids like live at the arcade. They've got the high score on a bunch of these things. They know the guy who's running it, some creepy kind of nerd guy who's sitting there eating Cheetos, trying to get a date with Nancy. Um,
Creeper.
it's one of my future numbers, but there's somebody who's breaking some of their scores that they don't know about.
Yeah, and hey, that in the day, let me tell you what, and I mean, if you've played at arcades too, and you've spent enough time there, you're proud of that
Oh
when your name
yeah,
is stamped on there, on those high
there's
scores.
when I worked at a sports bar, they had a car racing game, and being a server, I'd get a lot of quarters and stuff like that. So at the end of the night, usually I'd play a buck 50 worth, so it was like 3 games. And me and my buddy Rich, who worked in the back, each day we'd play and see who could be the top score. And this game was awesome because like you put in like you basically got like a sign in, and so like I can't remember what mine was, but you'd sign in, and each time you'd get like you'd keep your stats, and we'd always compete to see who could have the best record on the track. And there was one time I think it was either him or me like just hit a track perfectly, and like there was no way nobody could ever get close. Like you had to run it perfect to get this number. But yeah, like you'd walk by and I'd point to it and be like, hey, that's my number, see if you can beat it later. But yeah, so my number 5 is just kind of the whole arcade experience. The gang's back together, they're there having fun. But of course, this is Hawkins, this is Stranger
Hmm.
Things. Happiness isn't going to be there for very long. But
We don't get that carefree childhood arcade experience for too long because we know some freaky stuff is getting ready to happen again. But I totally agree with you. Growing up where I did that arcade was very similar to the one that I went to a lot as a kid. That was, I think I talked about it in one of the other episodes that we did, maybe the last one, where the arcade was right next door to the movie theater. So, and most video games were like a quarter. So it was hilarious thinking that these kids needed all that. Like Lucas is having to mow lawns to play these games because, like, some of those bigger games, as video games got more popular, I mean, it wasn't just Pac Man and Dig Dug anymore. You got these big games like that Dragon's Lair, and those did not just cost a quarter. Most of the games that I played were a quarter, usually no more than like 50 cents
mhm.
whenever I was playing as a kid. And so it's hilarious that these kids are having to scrounge up all this change to go play, not just to have a whole night at the arcade and have enough money to play, but those bigger games start costing a lot more. I remember, you look at it and it would tell you like, 75 cents, a dollar, $1.25, and you're like, what the hell? And
Yeah, I don't
uh,
know how kids like I don't know how arcades can stay open to this day. For one,
yeah,
because everybody's got their phones, everybody's got,
yep,
home consoles. Like back then in the 80s and even when I was in the 90s, like to get really cool games, like you had to go to an arcade. But
yeah,
today, like last time I went when I looked and it's like, oh, this is like a game I played 10 years ago that
uh-huh.
they want a buck 50 for. It's like I could download it on my phone for, free. So yeah, it's a whole like it's kind of like the blockbusters and things like that. It's just a thing of the past that, we're going to be sitting there telling these kids be like, "Back in my day, we could play on our fancy phones.
You don't know the struggles.
Had to mow it on for Mr. Johnson for $6."
Yeah. I know. They'll never know the struggles, but oh my gosh, how much fun it was. I mean, and that was a thing of pride. I remember being at the arcade a lot, and as you said, that the boys are all upset because they get to Dig Dug and they see Dustin has been knocked down because there's this new name up there with an incredibly high score. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
being ticked that because I wasn't at the arcade every single day. I didn't live like that close to it. So it was maybe once a week or once every couple weeks or something that I would be able to go. And I go back to one of my favorite games and I see I've been like knocked down off my high score and I was pissed. I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, if we're gonna remedy this, I'm gonna sit here and until I can get get it right back up where it was before I was not a happy camper. So I thought it was totally hilarious and a totally relatable moment when the boys are all like, what the hell, and Dustin's all mad. about it because
Dustin took it
experienced that
pretty
as well.
hard. Like I think he took it the hardest of most of them.
Well, and what was even more hilarious is whenever they find out that it's not just some other kid, it's a
Yeah.
girl.
Mm-hmm.
So
Spoiler alert, I've got that in my my future numbers.
yeah, so that's a really great number 5. Do you
Yep,
have
my number
anything else?
5 is just the arcade.
Oh God, miss those arcades. My number 4, it's kind of short, but just Joyce has a new man. He's
Mm-hmm.
well, and maybe I mean, and maybe not new, just she has a man.
Yeah, I saw him come in, and I knew he plays I think he's Raphael from the new Turtle cartoon.
Oh yeah,
So
Sean
he voices
Astin.
him. Yeah, he voices. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check before I make a false statement about the Ninja Turtles. And everybody's like, "I thought you were a Turtle fan." Yeah,
Calling
yeah,
you out, Sean.
he is Raphael from the Ninja Turtles. I was pretty sure about that.
That is super cool. I didn't know that. Well, I love Sean Astin. I knew from, just I didn't like read up on any spoilers. I did watch the trailer, of course, and we discussed that our last episode. And just knowing, like from Comic Con and stuff, that we had some new characters and stuff coming in, and I knew that he was one of them. Um, So I was completely thrilled. I mean, we've got Winona Ryder already, which is, she's huge from the late 80s and the 90s and does such a great job in this show. And then Sean Astin, who's had a pretty similar career. He was a kid actor. I mean, Goonies,
Yeah.
hello, kid actor. And then, has Lord of the Rings. I mean, holy hell. I mean, he's had
He was Rudy.
okay, well, that's a guy. Okay, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
I've never seen it. I just know it's always like, if you're a big sports fan, they're always like, "Oh my God, Rudy is the movie you have to watch. I cry like a baby."
I hear the same exact thing, and I've never seen it either.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody. But yeah, I've never, and I won't call it a guy movie. I was going to say it's a guy movie. I shouldn't say
I
that.
think it is.
But
It's yeah, it kind of is.
I mean, I love sports, but those movies don't do it for me. Like, some people really freak out about him. But yeah, he's had a great career. He's been around a long time. Um, I he's a little goofy, and I like that. And I thought it was funny to kind of see him and Winona Ryder, these two like big icons. They both had great careers. They've been around a long time. And to see them making out and see them as a couple, I didn't know that was really coming. I knew he was going to be in the show. I didn't really know who he was going to be or that he was going to be involved with Joyce. He seems like so lighthearted because like Joyce, when we saw her so much in the last season, she was frantic. She was
Yeah.
like over the edge. She was, high strung. A lot of people thought she was bananas. Not even not even the fact with Will missing, people just thought she was bananas and an oddball and kind of off her rocker. And then when Will, went missing, and that just seemed to have escalated it. So, he seems like, and she seems pretty good now. She still seems kind of on edge about some things, but he seems really lighthearted, carefree, easygoing, that he can kind of handle her. He's a good counterbalance, I think, to her personality. And I really thought, he was super sweet. To her and just sweet. And I really like that. So it's kind of, I don't have a whole lot to say on that. I probably have something in my notes for later, just little tidbits. But that was mine. Is Joyce has a man.
Yeah, I thought he was. I mean, I always hate whenever you see. I don't hate, I guess, but it always seems like whenever you see characters like that, he seems kind of naive. He seems like a good guy. He
Mm-hmm.
just is kind of a goober. Like when they're
Yeah.
they're doing movie night, so she's obviously with him with the kids. Like the kids know who he is.
Yeah.
And Jonathan picks out movies, and he walks in the room because they're talking about Kenny Rogers. It's like, well, who likes Kenny Rogers? And he comes in, it's like, oh, I love Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. It's
And he
hilarious.
walks up, looks at the movie, he's like, oh yeah, Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom.
Which you could have blew Bob's mind back then, be like, hey, that guy who plays Mr. Mom? He's gonna be Batman, and people are gonna be pissed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The note I had on this, like when he first walked in, and he's asking about the pumpkin, and she's like, oh, well, you need to go back across the street and go back to work, or she's going to get fired. He's like, oh, well, good, then I could hire you. I'm like, huh, Joyce is screwing the competition. All right.
And she's got something going. It's good to see she's still got her job though after last season where
That's a
she's
good point,
like
yeah.
buying all the phones and buying out all the Christmas lights and asking for an advance on her paycheck. At least we know she's still employed.
Well, I mean, it's cute to see those guys together, and but the thing whenever you see like these good guy, like goober good guys, it always seems like later on in episodes or in the story, they
Mm-hmm.
become creeps.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they don't do that with here because that always feels like a big trope. It's like, oh,
I
this guy
know.
is, he's a good guy up front. He's sweet and nice. Oh, but then he's gonna start being like, oh, Jonathan, you need to go to military school, and you know, Will, you need to buck up and stop being a little pansy boy. I hope they don't take it that direction, but we'll just have to wait and see.
I totally agree. I was thinking the same thing as I was watching it because I was like, he just seems too like adorably goofy. He seems too nice, too good to be true. Are, is he really what we perceive him to be? Is he really a jerk and he's acting, or or like you said, will something reveal itself
Mm-hmm.
later? I thought the same thing, and I'm like you. I hope that doesn't happen. I remember thinking that. I was like, oh, just let him just be, so adorable and carefree and kind of naive, a little bit.
There,
So
because
I
there's
hope.
people like that in this world that they're just naive. Like you said, they're like, oh yeah, there's this upside down world. Oh, okay, well let's go watch Mr. Mom again. It was funny.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But I don't know. I don't want to think that, but I'm such a skeptic and I'm so used to like things happening when I don't want them to, and trying to just expect the unexpected, that because as we see, and as I'm sure we'll cover in the rest of our discussion, is things are not what they seem in this season and episode so far. So, but I hope not. I hope he is what he is and not
Mm.
something else. So that's that's really good. What's your number four?
So my number four is, there's a lot of trust questions and trust issues in this episode, and I guess probably maybe the theme of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them I think that is preying on this is Maury Bowman. He is the gentleman who shows up at Hop's office, basically saying that there's a Russian conspiracy and that there is, Russians are going to attack. And they're kind of talking about, like, I guess this is like some kind of guy that writes like like when you go to the grocery store and you see the thing, there's like, Bat Boy comes from
Oh.
cave and eats 300 cows.
Weekly World News,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It seems like he writes those kinds of things. So he's done it on aliens, it sounds like, because one of the guys asked about his butt probing aliens.
Yep, Hugh
And
and Dewey.
yeah, and I love too, because he starts going into like, oh, I've got proof and evidence this time. Like somebody saying there's a Russian girl that has a shaved head that's been in here and she has psychic powers. And Huey or Dewey, I don't remember which one. He's like, you mean like the girl that made the boy pee his pants? And Hop jumps right, he's like, that was a prank. And Huey keeps going. He's like, my office. Let's go talk to my office. You got 5 minutes. And you think nothing of it. You think this is just some dude that's trying to write a story for like that World Weekly. No like bearing on this this town at all. But later on, we find out that he is suckering Barb's parents. I say suckering because I don't know if he's doing it other from the movie. This seems like a snake salesman to me. He's going in and basically they're selling their house to pay him to investigate Barb and try and figure out what happened to her. And he is just basically feeding off of other people's pain at this point to make a financial gain, it seems.
Yeah, I didn't know quite what to think about that feller. Um, but I thought it was real interesting, Hop shutting, the two deputies, whatever they're called, Huey and Dewey, about well, that was just a prank, totally shutting down, talking about 11 making Troy pee himself. Um, I don't know what to make of all of that, but it seemed like he was getting back into like a Hopper of this episode, at least here in the beginning. And we see this scene was a lot like the Hopper that were introduced to in the first episode of season
Yeah, for
one.
sure.
Yeah. Um, he's still, the whole coffee and contemplation,
Uh-huh. He
kind
goes
of
for the donut,
attitude.
and the receptionist gives him an apple. He takes like
Yep.
2 bites of it and throws it away.
I know, she's taking the cigarette out of his mouth, and he just seemed like he's just coming in, doing his job, doesn't want to be, just same as when Joyce comes in all hysterical. I think that was a really interesting parallel between the first episodes of
Oh
each
no, yeah,
season.
good call.
Was, that's how that one kind of started. We see, Hopper, we're introduced to him, and he's just kind of coming in like, ugh, another day, and got someone stealing the garden gnomes, and and Joyce comes in all hysterical because Will is missing, and now in this season it's kind of similar um, in the feel of Hopper's attitude, and you've got this maniacal person kind of coming in talking some crazy things, and Hopper's just like, all right, I'm gonna humor you. You've got 5 minutes. Um, so I thought that was an interesting parallel. I don't quite know what to think about that yet. I'm maybe we'll get to hear more of it. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be, new to the area, all this weird stuff going on. But
Well, I
it's
think,
like, how much do people really know? Because Hopper seems to be shutting people down about what really happened.
yeah.
So,
Well, I think that's kind of, I mean, we learn later in this episode probably why he's doing that because he goes out to his home, his
mm-hmm,
new home, and you figure out somebody's staying with him. I won't spoil it yet because I'm sure that might be one of our numbers. But, as they're talking about the girl, he shuts him down, says, okay, into my office because I think he's trying to lead him to a different direction. Like, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're just silly, just go home. Just do
mm-hmm,
your alien story. I liked your alien story better. Let's ignore this thing and do something else.
exactly. Let's not talk anymore about strange children with weird powers or anything
Exactly,
like that.
yeah.
He's trying to like divert him and get his focus back on these other things.
Because
So,
we don't know what he had discussions with the government. Because I mean, obviously there
no.
was something there. So he
Yeah.
does not want anybody bringing any light on him at all on this.
Yeah,
He wants it
he's
to sweep it all under the rug and just have nobody from the government like think twice about him.
exactly. Yep, I thought that was really interesting.
But yeah,
Um,
that's just my number 4 is Maury Bowman. I'm curious what he's going to play in this season.
yeah, I'm curious to see too. I think it just opens up. It's like, it's like we talk about a lot. We get questions and then some answers and then more questions that evolve out of those answers. So just more and more keeps going. So that's a really good number 4. My number 3 is Will. So we have Will. He's back. He's kind of dealing with what happened to him last year. Poor kid is, he's he's getting teased. He's getting weird
Yeah.
looks. He's still having visions of the Upside Down. You mentioned earlier the arcade. As they're bantering back and forth with the creeper with the Cheetos about dating, getting a date with Nancy.
What do you make,
Will.
like $2.50 an hour? Come on.
Those kids, I just love those kids so much. They're so adorable together.
I don't know if you caught it, but when Dustin's like, "Oh, he's going to spread that nasty rash to your whole family," he's like, "It's acne. It's not
It's not
contagious."
contagious. Oh my gosh, you just can't get any better than these kids and their little quips and comebacks. They're so awesome. Um, but poor Will, something's wrong. He hears something, he turns around. Everyone is gone because the arcade looks pretty crowded. It looks like it's lots of people, and there's stuff happening in the town, but all that's gone, and he's seeing the Upside Down again, which looks even more creepy, I think, than what it did, the
Yeah.
first season. It looks really disturbing. There's this weird like storm thing happening in the sky. It's red and cloudy, and there's lightning, and it just looks really ominous and scary as hell. And he's freaking out because obviously there's people around. Then he turns around and there's no one, and he's yelling for them, and no one's around, no one's answering. And then all of a sudden, Mike pops out the door, and it's like, hey, are you okay? And poor Will, he's just like, oh, yeah, sure. But he's, something's going on, and it he looked scared, but it didn't look like the first time that had happened to him. So obviously, I think that the he's had these occurrences, and just the fact that he's still not over this, that something in the Upside Down still has like an attachment to him, or he's still traumatized by it. He's getting teased about what happened with his disappearance. People are calling him Zombie Kid. That
Mm.
paper clipping that he found. He gets these weird looks as he's walking down the hall. Joyce comes to pick him up, and she's taking him in for this exam. And when they get there, Hopper's there to meet them. So I think, what the hell is going on? Um, but he's obviously having these regular exams and talking about what's happening, um, which I'm interested to hear more about. This new like administration that's come in after Dr. Brenner's disaster, because it looks like it's the same facility that it was before, that we saw a lot of. So it's like, and it could be different. It looks like they were on a long drive. whenever Joyce and Will were in the car. It looked like a longer drive than what that facility was, but it was hard to tell. So I don't know the time frame. But they're checking Will out, talking to him about it. Um, but I did like, later on in the episode, Will is in his room and he draws a lot. We saw that in season 1. He always had all these drawings and he's drawing this zombie boy, and Jonathan comes in. And I love Jonathan and Will's relationship so much that Jonathan, because Will tells him, he's like, I'm a freak. And Jonathan's like, well, yeah, you are. And Will's like, you know what? But he's like, it's cool to be a freak. And he's like, boring is normal. And I love that so much because that's what I like tell my kid all the time. That, I mean, she doesn't really call herself a freak or anything, but I'm like, boring, normal is boring. Um, it's it's fun to be a freak. No boring person ever did anything cool or made a difference in the world or made an impact on the world. And I love their relationship so much, that Jonathan and Will have, and that he's trying to make him feel better, about the situation and people making fun of him, and that he's actually, the cool one, not them. So that's my number 3 is Will, and him dealing with everything that's going on. I really feel for that kid and everything he's been through.
Yeah, I really like. So Joyce, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, but when Joyce is picking him up and dropping him off, she seems a little bit more calm. Like
Mm-hmm.
she definitely was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be here right at 9. Make sure you don't go anywhere." Like it seems like they have a little bit more of rules in place of not like kind of wandering.
Yeah.
So at least she seems a little bit more calm from that aspect. But the thing I find interesting with Will was when and this is actually my number 1. But when Will was, talking to the doctor, for one, the doctor seemed a lot more like an actual doctor. Like, he's like, hey, so what kind, like, you lost a pound since the last time you came in here, making room for that candy, right? Very much like bedside manner, like was a lot better, it seemed, than Dr. Brenner's.
Mm-hmm.
But as Will is talking about, going between worlds, he's like, well, I saw this thing and I was like frozen, like, was frozen scared. And, he says like, okay, well, did it want to hurt you? He's like, well, no, it didn't want to hurt me. Like it was evil. It didn't want to hurt me though, but it wanted to hurt everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if like him being in the upside down for as long as he was is kind of like basically made him part of like the upside down club. Like,
Right.
they're going to have their own TV show and, their own song. And, it's like UPSIDE. We're in the upside down and we're going to eat everybody.
Special club.
But I mean, the kids seem super brave, and I know it's. I mean, I can even imagine like being, if I have my own funeral where I die and then come back and be, like kids obviously are mean, and they're going to be even meaner at that because
I
like, okay, you
know.
are a freak.
I know. It's such a horrible time in school too, because kids are mean anyway, but like the age that they're at, it's horrible.
Oh yeah,
You don't want to stand out. You don't want to be, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it, but you don't want to be the weirdo. You don't want to be the freak because, that's not like a cool time. You don't appreciate being a freak until you're a little bit older.
hmm
You know?
yeah, it's tough. I mean, like like everybody always says, like be yourself, be unique. Not in grade school and high school, because
No.
if you're unique and you're different, you're gonna get pegged real hard. It's kind of like Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
You see as he was walking out, like the girl purposely seemed to skip giving him one of the invites to the get sheet faced party.
Yep.
And, Nancy, being a great friend of his, gets a second one and gives it to him like, hey, you're coming to this with us.
Yeah. Wasn't easy, that's for sure. To have to go through what he's been through, because yeah, I mean from the outside of everything has like been covered up, and but everybody knows that like Will, they had a funeral for Will. So and then he comes back, but comes back from where? And I think that's why he's being targeted as like a zombie kid. And I'm curious to know exactly how that got explained. That where did this body come from? How did they have this funeral? But then all of a sudden he's back to life. And nobody knows the real story because they're still covering it up. So, yeah, he's getting all these weird looks and getting teased, and then on top of everything else, he's dealing with PTSD from being
Yeah.
in the upside down, and it's still got a hold on him. Not only is he, because even if I think he wasn't having these episodes that they call them, you know, um, it's not just episodes and PTSD, it's still got a hold on him. And even if he wasn't still having these episodes, hell yeah, he'd have PTSD. He was stuck in this place for like a
Mm-hmm.
week, all alone, being chased by this horrible creature, can't get home, scared. I mean, I'm an adult and I don't think I'd be handling it as well as
When
what.
I wonder if it's not like I know like it's I wonder with him if the doctor is telling Joyce and Hopper that it's PTSD when it's really actually he's actually going into these places.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh well, he's he thinks he's going there, he's really not. But these scientists and everything are working for the government, like, oh shit, like this is actually happening.
Yeah, it's like it's still seeping. The upside down is still seeping into our world. It's not contained at all, and something is still happening. Um, and when we thought it was over, it wasn't over. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you see that with that dude that went in there with the flamethrower.
yeah, yeah, something's happening.
Cool. Well, good
What's
number 3. Yeah, that was my number
yeah,
1 was Will. And like, I hope he's a
awesome.
big part of this season because we didn't see much of him last season,
Uh-huh.
but I hope he's a pretty pivotal point in this one.
Right. Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. I'd like to see he's done a really great job in this episode so far, so I'm interested to see more of him as well. What's your number 3?
So my number 3 is the new girl on campus, MadMax.
Yahoo! She's
So we
my
see
kind
her
of
show up.
gal.
Yeah, she's a pretty badass girl. Like she skateboards, so she's awesome, right?
Yeah.
I love that she walks into class and the teacher has Dustin do a drum roll and she's like, it's our new friend all the way from sunny California. Because this is probably more back in the time too, like in the Midwest. Like people from California or the East Coast were like these unicorn type things. Like it's like, oh my God, you're from California?
Yeah,
Like, what's that
absolutely.
like? And
Exactly.
because the world seems to have gotten a lot smaller in this our generation or this generation now. Like after like social media and the internet and everything. Like you want to see what California looks like, just type in Google and you'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
But back then it's like, oh, we just saw it from textbooks that were 30 years old when I was looking at it. But she comes in, drum roll, like Maxine is like, it's Max. Everybody calls me Max. So she's got a badass attitude. Her brother, like I loved when he rolled in his Camaro with his jean jacket, smoking a
Mm-hmm.
cigarette, long hair. All the girls like, who's that boy from California? Look at that booty. Um, and you don't really see much from him except he's blaring like 80s hair band music, which is kind
Yeah.
of the thing. Like that music's not like I don't really associate that with badassness now, but I'm sure back then it was. And like
Uh-huh.
seeing this makes me nervous for like where I'm at in my life now because like if I pop in my high school CD, I'm like, ah, yeah, let's rock out to some of this. All the kids that see me drive by is like, oh, look at that old man trying to relive his glory days. Like I'm at that point now in my life. I'm an
Uh-huh.
old man.
Uh-huh.
I don't like it.
No, no.
But the cool thing is, so they're investing, like they're spying on her. The group's spying on her, and it's like that can't be Mad Max. Like that cannot. Like girls don't play video games. Like they do not
Oh,
play video games.
yeah, that line. Oof.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's back then it was like what girls played with dolls. That's pretty much all it was. It's kind of the
Yeah.
idea. I'm glad we're past all that now. It's like gamer girls are like it's not really gamer girls and gamer boys anymore. It's just gamers.
Gamer. Yeah.
But it was pretty cool, like that they're investigating, her, and she knew it. Like they knew that she was spying on them. So she's definitely still a very mysterious character. But I love that this whole like new person and like it, is this a new person to their group too? That's something that I'm kind of wanting to see happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good points. That and I'll talk a little bit about that because that's actually my number one are these new kids in town. So we've got some, fresh blood in Hawkins, and it's in the form of this super hot high school guy, which I might get in trouble for saying that. I'm definitely
Well, like so you're talking about it's tough to tell age. So Nancy plays like a 16-year-old, and when I was looking through all the bios of the characters, she's actually like 22. So it's that whole like thing of like, oh, you're playing a high school student, but you're, super
yeah.
old. So this guy could be like 40 playing
Yeah, I
this high
mean
school kid. You know.
well, I need to give him my number, but
Well, you remember 90210, like I can't remember what his name was. He
oh, yeah, Steve. I can't. Ian was it
yeah,
Ian
there's
Ziering,
him.
and then
There's
Gabrielle Carteris was like 32 or something, playing a 16-year-old.
well, there's the real big character from that show who he lived by himself in the show, but he was in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and a bunch of other movies. What was
Oh,
his name?
He played Dylan McKay. What was it? Luke
Yeah,
Perry.
Luke Perry. Yeah, he was like 35 when that show was going on.
Yeah, they were all in like their 20s and 30s. I think the only one that was actually almost actual age was Shannon Doherty. I think she was actually closer in age to her character than all the others.
Which is ridiculous because, like, when you're like 12 watching, like, oh, that's what I'm gonna look like in high school. I'm gonna have a full beard and gray hair.
I'm gonna look 30 whenever I'm in high school.
That's funny.
I know. Yeah, I'll have to check this out because I'm afraid I was gonna get in a little bit of trouble for thinking that this high school kid was certainly something to look at, and it was hilarious because he was totally the guy that I would have went for back in my day. I mean, he had me at that car.
Oh yeah, the Camaro rolling in.
Oh my gosh, that was my car. And that would have done it for me. And then he's got the Scorpions blasting, in his speakers. That was, Scorpions was not like a number one band for me, but that was a really good song. I like the song. I appreciated that. But here he comes rolling in. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was definitely the type of guy I'd have been scoping out. I would have been one of those girls leaning on that car, going, "Who's this new kid? I got dibs." Y'all back, y'all back off. Yeah,
Jean jacket's mine, bitches.
yeah, lay off that jean jacket. He's mine. The hair not so great, and it wasn't just because it was like kind of like the mullet style from back in the day. I know that was like the popular thing, but it looked a little fakey. I know
Yeah.
obviously this kid has not grown his own mullet like Josh McDermott from The Walking Dead, but maybe he should consider it because that was not a good look. Um, or the hair, it just looked a little off. So I wish they could improve like some of the wigs or hair pieces or whatever it is that they use for characters who don't have the actual hair that they need. But the hair was a little bit off, but I can look past that. We did not get to see a lot of him. We just caught glimpses of him, but we did get to meet this girl a little bit more. I loved the introduction. You mentioned it a little bit. The Mr. Clark and his adorable dorkiness. I'm glad that is still there.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really funny when he's like, he's all smiles and he's his, funny Mr. Clark and says that she's from sunny California. This girl does not look sunny at all. She
Yeah.
she's just like
She looks very goth.
she is. She's a little bit emo before it was, before there was emo. But the boys are absolutely fascinated with her. She can skate or skateboard, which makes her super cool. They find out that she is the Mad Max from the video games, and you saying, Will's like, girls can't play video games. I beg to differ, young Will, because I did play video games in my day, and my name was on those high score lists. So I'll just have to argue with that a little bit. But it seems like they kind of come around and say, "Wow, she's a pretty cool chick." So I'm interested to know as well if she's going to become a part of their group, and instead of the boys there will be a girl in there, because I love that. I mean, that was totally, I felt that real connection with Max because I felt like, well, that was me. I was the oddball, in class. You had all like the girly girls, and then I was like the tomboy nerd that liked to play video games. I liked to skateboard. I liked to do the things that wasn't like a typical girl kind of thing to do. So I feel a connection with her already. I love her already, and I really like her older brother. So that's awesome. Do you have anything else to say about that?
Nope. That's let's see. That was. Oh yeah. So that
That was
was Mad Max. Yeah. So pretty much
Mad
all I had on
Max.
there.
Awesome. Yeah, Mad Max. What a great reference too to the movie, right? To the
Yeah.
Mel Gibson
That's.
movie.
I was expecting it to be something related to that, like some apocalyptic type thing, but no, it's just badass chick.
Just yeah, she's awesome. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, my number two, it's a theme in all of my points whenever I'm talking about all the episodes is Hopper.
Mm.
I can't let this go without talking about Hopper a little bit. And I know we've talked a lot about him, so I may end up repeating myself, and I'll try not to. In some, since you've already talked about him earlier, we talked about how quick he was to cover up the fact that 11, oh, this girl made that bully pee himself, and he was quick to look over and go, that was a prank, and like shut it down really quick. When he's out there investigating the pumpkins that are all rotted, which that was gross. All those rotten pumpkins out in the field, that just looked nasty.
Yeah, it just happened in like one morning too. So like they're perfect
Yeah.
one day, then just like fly rotten the next.
Yeah, nothing happens that fast. I've never seen anything, at least that wasn't of some sort of strange phenomenon that happens so quickly overnight. So, we see him out there, but then he goes out into the cornfield next to the pumpkin patch and he looks spooked. You would think that Hopper would be, maybe not quite as on edge, or maybe he is even more on edge because of what happened, but he just seemed a little bit more spooked than what I anticipated him to be. Like, he brings out his gun, I feel, pretty
Mm-hmm.
early, and he seems just jumpy and scared of what's actually out there, or this noise that he's heard, and just comes upon this scarecrow out there. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he just seemed really on edge, and maybe it's because of everything that he's been through is why he was so spooked. But he just seems so um, like, well, I've done and seen it all. I've been in the upside down. What the hell can spook me now? I was kind of expecting that kind of attitude. Um, when they were talking about how Ted had denied that 11 stayed in the basement, when they were talking about, oh, he was talking to that guy in his office about that. I thought, fucking Ted,
Yeah.
and his BS. Here we got more of his crap. That's not going away apparently anytime soon. You know, and then, we see Steve and Nancy go to Barb's parents' house, and apparently this is like a regular thing that they do. And, Barb's parents still think that she's missing. And it's like, so Hopper is still working on keeping all of this covered up. And I guess that's part of what we saw the last episode of season 1, whenever he's going off with the government and this deal that he made them, that, this never happened. All we want to do is find Will. You're going to let us find him and you're going to let us go. And we're not going to talk about this. And he was telling Joyce the same thing, as he's so stoically walking down the hall, and when they're getting ready to get suited up to go into the upside down and look for Will, that's what he was telling her. He's like, this never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, now she's in on it too. She's going along with the whole thing. And it was kind of sad. I felt really sad for Barb's parents,
Yeah.
thinking that they still think that she's missing, and they've hired this person to find her, and they're even selling their house to be able to afford to do it. Um,
When
and they
Joyce like knows the truth and she can't tell them,
I
like that's got to
know.
be like, somebody's giving up all their life savings to basically try and figure out something that you already know.
Yeah, and I mean, and she knows what that's like. I mean, she Will was missing, and so she knows what these parents are going through, and she knows the truth. Hopper knows the truth, and it's like seeing the extreme that they're going for to keep this covered up. That they've gone so far as to, let them believe that she's still missing and not dead as we know her to be. Just sad. They had that little shrine in their house. Um, to her. They even had a picture in the bathroom, which I found weird.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
I don't want pictures of people in the bathroom.
Yeah.
See, I take
Bath-
showers in there, people.
Bathroom's private time. Like
Yeah, that's
I don't want somebody's creepy picture staring at me and judging me. Like,
yeah,
oh, hey Sean, I see you've put on a little extra weight.
exactly. No judgment. As we're no judgment of when we're in the bathroom and taking showers, and don't look at me. I want to see, I like a nice beachy theme in the bathroom.
Yeah,
Let's keep
yeah.
it calm. Let's keep it serene.
It's like I'm on my own private nude beach. That's what I'm doing right now.
Exactly. But yeah, and then we see at the end, as far as how far that Hopper has gone to cover up, um, and this, I hope this isn't creeping into any. It might already be because it was a real big ass moment, but I'm gonna just go ahead and go there as far as how far Hopper's covering this up. But who is he covering it up for? Who do we see at the end when he, like you said, he goes to the house, and is it his new house? Um, we see him, he looks pretty comfortable there, and we see a little surprise
Mm-hmm.
person from last season, and that would be 11. And I remember being very excited. I didn't know that she was coming back so soon. So to see her was super awesome. They obviously have a relationship, but um, who is he? We know that he's covering up everything that happened in the first season, with the experiments and with 11 and what happened with Will and what happened to Barb. Um, but I think he's also covering up the fact that 11, because I think that
Mm-hmm.
they would be very interested to have 11 back if they knew that she was there. But how long has this been going on? We saw him in last season. He's leaving the Eggos and the food out in that little box in the woods.
Well,
So
that would have
he's
been Christmas time, so like maybe a week or two after. the events happened where she blew up the Demigorgon. So I mean,
Right.
it's realistic to think that this has probably been going on since the first of the year. So I mean, 10 months maybe. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you could easily say it's been going on that long.
Yeah. So,
And it was, I mean, like like when he was walking out there, I was expecting like he was going to go and interview or investigate some like conspiracy theory type guy that he knows, but no, he's got like traps set up so that if somebody walks over, there's a trip line.
mm-hmm.
He had a special knock on the door, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think if it's the right knock, then L would open it. Otherwise, there's probably some kind of rule or some kind of procedure that if somebody doesn't knock like this, you run or do something.
Right.
I love that her dessert was Egos. And
She's
he's like,
got
"What'd
her
we
egos.
say?" It's like you weren't here by 8:15 and you didn't give the sign. He's like, "Well, it's 8:15. I'm sorry I got caught up in some stuff, but the rule is no dessert until after dinner."
Thought that was so sweet how he's and it just occurred to me this sweet relationship that he's got with 11. He seemed, once he discovered her in the last season, he seemed protective over her, and it's sweet to see how he's kind of taken her in. He lost his own daughter,
Mhm.
and we saw how that came about in the last season, and to see how he's kind of taken 11 in, and she has a it's sweet because we saw her relationship with Dr. Brenner, and she called him Papa, and how obviously he was not like a real papa to her. You don't treat your children that way, and he didn't really love her or care for her. She seemed more like a possession than a person to him, and to see how she now has this relationship with Hopper, I love, because I think that he needs that and she needs that based on their past experiences. But I don't know how Hopper isn't drinking himself into a grave with all the shit that he's having to keep covered up. I mean, it seems like that would keep me on a high stress level at all times, thinking he's got 11 hiding out over here and he can't tell anyone about, and he's got to keep her safe. And no one can really know his whereabouts and what he's doing, and he's got to keep it quiet. Now he's got all this upside down stuff that he's covering up, along with Joyce. And it's like, I don't know how that dude's keeping it together.
Well, I think it all goes back to just him having purpose. Like when we first see him, he's drunk in a stupor,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't have any purpose. Like his biggest failure was the fact that, or the biggest failure to him anyway, I think, is that his daughter passed away.
Mm-hmm. And he couldn't do anything about it.
Exactly. But once, the whole thing with Will became more of a real issue, like he kind of seemed to go back into like, okay, I'm Hopper, the detective slash, father guy. And, if he didn't find 11, I think maybe he would have fallen back into that, but 11's still giving him purpose, like it's giving
Mm-hmm.
him a reason to, stay sharp and to, go on with his normal persona. But he has like this person he's trying to protect. So I think that's kind of probably why we haven't seen him drop into that. If something happens to Elle or something happens to any of the people that he's caring for,
Mm-hmm.
then like, yeah, that's where we're basically, a full season of him slowly deteriorating.
Yeah, yeah, you make a really good point, because even though we saw in the beginning of this episode a lot of similarities, kind of with his almost similar attitude that he had when we first met him in the season opener of the first season, we saw him wake up to like all these beer cans, all over the place. So obviously he drinks quite frequently, and pill bottles knocked over. We didn't see that this time. We didn't see that he's still continuing with the drinking and whatever pills that he was taking. Um, he seems to be carrying the same attitude, so it can be just like status quo. Yep, it's just me, same old Hopper, just doing my thing. But in reality, you can tell that he's, yeah, like you said, he does seem more like a man with a purpose, and a man on a mission. And the mission is keeping those things covered up and also being protective of 11. So that's my number two is Hopper, because I always have to talk about Hopper in some capacity when we're talking about this show. That's it. What's your number two?
So my number two, it seems like I wrote it down one because I'm like, okay, I think there's one of these, but in the end, I found three, and it is the love triangles going on in this season.
Mm-hmm.
So one, we have Steve, Jonathan, and Nancy. Whenever Nancy gives him the flyer, Jonathan or gives Jonathan the flyer, Steve comes around the corner, picks her up, and they start making out at her locker. And Jonathan kind of slowly walks away, and Nancy gives him that longing glare, like, "Oh, if only Steve too." Like, can we make this work, Jonathan? Like, just the three of us.
Oh gosh.
Um, there was some jealousy, I think, from Hop. So that makes me think that Hop, Joyce, and Bob the Brain might be a little bit of a love triangle.
Mm.
So as they were walking in, um, Hopper kind of says, "Well, so how's Bob the Brain doing?" And she kind of got on him, but it seemed like he was a little jealous there. And then the one that I'm probably most excited about is MadMax, Dustin, and Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
So as they're sitting there watching for her to get to the arcade, Lucas is like, "Hey, Dustin, go ahead and go home. Like you said, your mom's gonna kill you. Like I'll stay here and I'll radio when she gets here." Dustin's like, "Why? So you can make your move?" And he's like, "Well, I think I probably have a better chance than you." And this is the other thing I love about Dustin this episode. He's like, "Oh, well, not without these pearlies I have now." And he does a little
I
like
know.
growl. And he is so excited about having front teeth in this
I
season.
know.
But I'm curious if where all these are going to go or if we're going to find more of them. But I love the idea of these love triangles going on. And they're not like
Mm-hmm.
super like violent ones, it seems. It's just like, competition on a couple and then kind of like, oh, well, if only some other cards had happened, maybe the other guy would win. So my number
Exactly.
2 is the love triangles.
There's still some, not just all the weird stuff happening around, but you get some like normal stuff that still
Yeah.
happens, in life as far as the competition between the boys and the new girl in school. And yeah, Nancy and Steve are still together, and Jonathan probably still has a thing for her, but realizes that it's not gonna happen or anything. So he's still, I think content at least to be friends with her because it's more than what he had in the first season, or at least
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of the season. They seemed to develop a good friendship as they were, monster hunting and everything that they were doing in the last season. Um, so I think he's somewhat content because he still at least gets to be around her. If he can't be with her, he still can be friends with her, and they get to laugh and be playful, at school and in the hallways and stuff. Even though she's with Steve, um, is he still Steve the D right now? Shawn, has he?
Um,
He seems like a good guy in this episode so far.
yeah, I've got it. I've been coining him a lot of different things. I do have a note for him, and I'm calling him Steve the Adult.
Oh.
So he talks, as they're in the car, he's talking about, it's like, hey, like, I guess he's doing some kind of resume for a college and
Mm-hmm.
where he compares like him winning a basketball game to his granddad being in a war. And I love that, like, Nancy's like, okay, well, what's the connection? It's like, well, we both won. Like, oh yeah, great job. But he talks about working for his dad. He talks about, like, gives you insurance and adult stuff. And it allows him to stick around Hawkins to make sure that she doesn't forget his pretty face.
Aw.
So, I
And
mean,
that
that's,
hair.
oh yeah. And that's kind of a tough thing. Like, I know there's always like high school love, and like, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, I'm going to stick around here, because I'm not going to go to that college that I probably should go to. I'm going to stick around here to be with you. And, it's, you kind of like, you don't want to be like, well, you should do what's best for you because high school relationships don't always work out.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, what are you going to do? Love makes guys do stupid things, really, is kind of the key to it.
That's for sure. Makes us all do stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was glad to see that he still seems to be a pretty good guy, that it's carried over, that he seems to have a change. I didn't see his asshole friends,
Yeah, that's true.
in the picture whenever
I
they
think,
were, at any time that we saw Steve or Nancy, in school. So I don't know if he's still friends with them or if he's realized that he's not that person. Maybe he had quite an awakening with everything that happened last season and he's really not that person, and doesn't want to be around that type of influence. But I thought it was interesting, and I'm interested to see if it still stays that way and what develops, if like you said, these love triangles, if they do become more of a love triangle, and Jonathan tries to be more than a friend to Nancy, or she tries to be more than a friend to him, or what happens with that, and if he still stays a cool guy, because I'm willing to give him a chance. People
mm-hmm.
people can be assholes. There are lots of people I know that were complete assholes in high school, and then today they're like super nice people. So it can happen, but I'm interested to see what happens, and then how this new guy is going to be,
Oh
how he's
yeah.
going to factor in.
I'm hoping it's not a lot like a love square. Because if
Yeah.
there's 3 dudes going for Nancy, like that's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want it to be that. Um, that kind of a thing, or for Nancy to be drawn to him. And because if that's true, then she's just attached to bad boys, because Steve was a bit of a bad boy,
Yeah.
there for a
When they
while in the
when they
beginning.
settle
So,
down and become more like good guys, she's like, all right, well, I gotta find me some other project to fix.
well, that's a problem in high school. Let me tell you, you always fall for those bad boys that you think that you can make it into a good boy, and those bad boys are they're hard to resist. They are hard to resist. So,
That's
the
why I was single in high school.
Yeah, you don't appreciate some of those fellas until you get older, that's for sure. And you realize,
Well,
why do I fall for all those bad boys? Because it just doesn't work out.
yeah, it's a great point. That's what Joyce is doing right now. Like her husband was probably a bad boy, married him, and now he's off running. Now she's gonna marry the good guy, Bob the Brain, or at least
Yeah,
date him.
yeah, at least dating. Yeah, Bob the Brain. He's definitely good balance for her, that's for sure. That's a
But yeah.
really good number two.
So what do you
How do
have for your number two?
well, we covered my number two with Hopper, so I think we're ready. If you
Oh
don't have
yeah.
anything else on yours, I'll
No.
just jump into my number one. I pretty much covered and talked about when you were talking about Mad Max, and her awesomeness and how I relate to her. And I really, really like her. I'm interested to see. I love how she called the boys out when she dropped that note, when she
Yeah,
crinkled
that
it
was
up in
pretty
the
cool.
note, and that was hilarious. Like, stop creeping on me. You guys are creeps. I
Stop
love how
spying
she's
on me, creeps.
yeah, and she was savvy enough and smart enough to know exactly what those boys were doing. So I love that. I love how she was smart and sharp, and these boys aren't, fooling her at all. Just because she's the new kid, and I love it. I can really relate to her, and of course I've swooned over the boy already, her older brother, this new kid that in that cool car. So I don't have that was my number one. I don't have any other I don't think thoughts on that. What is your number one? Because I'm anxious to hear what yours is.
Yep, and my number one was just Will too. So we kind of covered a lot on that. Again, just to reiterate, like that kid is super brave. I mean, if I was,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just a mental PTSD type thing, instead of actually physically going back into the upside down,
Mm-hmm.
like as strong as he is, like I mean, I can only imagine what like a kid like that would be going through to be like just complete breakdown, but and getting made fun of at school. I mean, at least he has his friends, but even then he's like they treat me like a baby. But
Yeah.
I just hope we see a lot from Will this season because I think he's a really interesting character.
I think so too. I'm real anxious to, hopefully, because we did not get a lot of him last season, and I really hope we get a lot more of him. I think he's a really great actor. I think he did a really great job in the short amount of time that we saw him last season. So I'm really interested to see more of him. So hopefully they will utilize him, and he won't go disappearing again anytime soon, and we get to see him more on the screen. So and I know that you brought up earlier just one point that I had where it's like he's not allowed to walk or bike home alone anymore. It's like Joyce is so overprotective that she won't even let him. She's picking him up from everywhere. She's dropping him off everywhere at the arcade, picking him up from school. It's like that poor kid. I kind of totally get where she's coming from a parent perspective. Like, that is not happening again. And I'm sure it is kind of scary for her because he's having these episodes, and she's probably scared out of her mind thinking that something else might happen again. So I don't blame her, but I kind of felt for, thinking from my perspective at that age, being a kid, like I said, everybody's treating him like a baby, and, he's not allowed to kind of do his own thing. Um, so trying to think. That's a really good number one. Did you have any notes?
I've got a few. So let's see. So I trust was a big thing, like I said, I thought about in this episode. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it seems like after the end of the episode, it made sense, but I was curious if the doctor knows the truth. So as he was talking to Will and everything, like I didn't come off when he's first talking to him that he actually thought there was a real upside down. Like he thought like, oh, this is a mental thing that he went through.
Mm-hmm.
But as we see, he's basically the new Dr. Brenner. Like he knows
Yep.
there's the upside down. He knows where it's at. So he's kind of running this whole facility. And as Hop was leaving, the doctor comes out and waves, and Hop didn't wave back, and I think he's got a whole lot of trust issues with the new doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yard sales, they're the killers of kids' memories. So this was at the time where parents would be like, hey, get rid of all those action figures, like you don't play with them anymore. And then 30
No.
years later, like, oh my god, that Hulk I had is worth like
I
$300.
know my Castle Grayskull is gone. much money that's worth on eBay?
Let's see. Baby Demigorgon? Like, it seems like it's the thing running around that Hop kind of saw and the thing in the trash can. Like, I'm wondering if it could be a baby Demigorgon, which, it's kind of like baby crocodiles. Like, they're really, really cute when they're babies, but then they get big and it's like, oh God, like,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of cats missing in the neighborhood because Sparky might pet alligators on the loose.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And let's see, I got one more thing about my favorite character of this TV series, but one note I had at the very end when Will was in his house, used the bathroom, was walking out, and the door flipped open. They zoomed up on his back of his neck, and you saw his goosebumps. I've never seen that in a TV show or movie or anything that I can think of.
I haven't either. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my notes too. Wasn't that great?
That was, yeah.
Effect?
Because like I was like, oh, are they gonna let the hair kind of stand up on the back of his neck like he's scared? And it kind of did, but it was mostly just the goosebumps. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's really cool. Like that made that moment just that more intense.
It did. Yeah, because then you felt you could really feel you didn't have to just look at his face, which from that perspective we couldn't see his face. We saw the back of his head and neck, but that just really made it all the more real instead of having to like emote that on his face and how scared he was. You could almost feel it yourself. I think I had goosebumps at the same time seeing that going, "Whoa." And this makes me sad. Poor Will, that poor kid.
Yeah.
He
Like
cannot just be normal.
can't even go up and go to the bathroom without having like a episode.
I know, and that flipping whatever the hell it was that he saw in the sky.
Yeah.
I think they're calling it the shadow monster.
Okay.
From what I saw, and when people are discussing the trailer, they're calling that whatever that thing is that he saw come kind of when come out of those like storm cloud things from the upside down. That looks like something straight up out of Stephen King. Like something from The Mist. Those
Yeah, that's a
real
good call.
wackadoodle creatures that come out, from The Mist that just you do not belong here.
Well,
you
I thought
know?
they're like tentacles at first, but they're just really long legs. Because in the end of this, you see a really clear shot that it has like a big giant head too.
Yeah, that thing looks like it could have eaten the Demogorgon. I mean, that was intimidating. That was scary. And it wasn't just like, I mean, Will said it was evil. It's almost like he can feel it, and he can sense that it's evil and feel that it's evil. And that I think is more scary almost than that Demogorgon that we had last season. I mean, I thought that thing was super scary, but that thing just seemed more like an animal where it was just on instinct killing and eating things. Like it wasn't necessarily like evil, like it had a purpose. It was just a wild animal that existed in the upside down, and we just got a peek in the upside down of how scary this place is. But now we're really kind of seeing what the hell's coming out of there. I mean, there was so much in this episode. I know we're not going to cover everything. We saw that Paul Reiser as this
Yeah.
new doctor guy. I love him. I love seeing, all these people that I've known a long time in shows and movies. I mean, he came from Aliens, one of my all-time favorite movies.
I remember him from Mad About You. That's the first time I think I've ever saw him.
Yeah, well, I watched that too. I loved him in Mad About You, but it was definitely not my first introduction to him because I was a huge Aliens fan as a kid, and he was a real not nice guy. He was a cover-up guy in that movie, and I think that's real interesting to know where he came from in Aliens if you are familiar with his character in that movie, and then to see him here, it's like he comes across as like, you can trust me. I'm a good guy. I am not Dr. Brenner. Like you mentioned, he's like the complete opposite of like Dr. Brenner. He's got a good bedside manner. He's, a fun, relatable guy. But do we really trust him? I mean, I don't know. I mean, why is he really there? And what's their purpose? And you can see how they've kind of contained the upside down did not go away. Whatever events happened last season with 11 and the Demigorgon and her getting rid of him did not close that gate. That gate is still like there, and they have it. I mean, they've got, seems like a better kind of containment around it or whatever, but you saw them go in with the oh shoot, what's that thing called, the fire thingy,
The flamethrower.
yeah, flamethrower. Why can I not think of that? But you see them go in with that, so there's stuff still creeping out of that thing. I mean, they're going in there, it looks like it's this is a daily, weekly kind of
Containment
thing.
type thing.
Yeah, this is routine for them. There's still things coming out of the upside down, and they're having to routinely go in there and get rid of it, whatever's still creeping out. So that to me was like a scary moment. It's like, oh my god, that did not go away. it's still trying to get into our world. There's still the crack here, and it's still trying to seep its way in. You can see it happening with Will. You can see it happening there. This thing is, whatever's happening is not contained, and they haven't figured out how to close that off or make it go away. But that was kind of creepy. I totally intruded in on your notes. What other notes did you have?
Oh, well, the last note I had is, our friend fucking Ted.
Fucking Ted.
So, they're the mom's trying to basically discipline Mike, and they're talking about, like, you had a rough year, blah blah blah. Said something about his friends did it. It's like, oh well, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you? It's like, okay, that's a total dad thing to say.
Yes.
But the line that got me, so they're talking about, like, this isn't your first strike. This is strike 1, strike 2, and then Ted jumps in, it's like, yeah, this is like strike 20. You're not in the game anymore. You're on the bench. And if you had my coach, you'd be off the team. And goes right back to eating. Like, the total nonsense comment.
Yes.
And even Mike's like, fucking dad. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I'm glad at least there's one character I can still hate, and that's Ted.
We can always rely on Ted. That's hilarious because I had the same exact note. That line, oh, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump too? And I was like, ugh. I mean, I was right there with Mike rolling my eyes. And I'm like, really? Ted, that's the best thing that you've got? is that old, tired, parent line that, oh, I've never used that, by the way. Just, in defense, I've never said that.
I'm going to do my best not to.
I'm going to encourage you to please not let that roll off your tongue as your young boy grows up and starts to do those foolish things at that age. I hate that line. I'm going to say I don't think I've ever used it. My kid will probably tell me otherwise. But she doesn't listen to this, so that's okay. She'll never know to correct me. Exactly. Fucking Ted.
But that was my last note. What did you have for notes?
Let's see, a couple little fun things sprinkled throughout because, we love this show for the mystery, the intrigue. It's scary. It's all these wonderful things, great characters, so many things. But one of my all-time favorites about this show is the 80s nostalgia of this show, and a couple little things sprinkled throughout that made me happy. I'm probably missing some, so I've only watched the show once, guys, so keep that in mind, listeners. If you see other things, point them out to me, write in and tell me of other things that I missed, because I think Nancy, I did not rewind it because I was trying to watch this and take my notes so we could record. I think Nancy had a new poster in her room. I might be wrong, but last year it was Tom Cruise. I'm pretty sure. And
yeah, last year it was Tom Cruise.
So I think it was in a flash when she caught Mike taking the money from her piggy bank that there was a new poster. So I'm going to try and watch it a second time sometime and go back and see what that was. But I want to know what that poster was. It's killing me. But we saw Terminator playing at the theater.
Yeah, saw that.
Yeah, that came out in 1984. And I mean, talk about a classic. I love, love, love the Terminator. T2 as well was pretty damn awesome. So that was super cool to see that. We talked a little bit about the MadMax reference. The new kid in town, Maxine, calls herself MadMax. Thought that was a nice little throwback to the Mel Gibson movie. I don't remember the year that came out, but I know it was early 80s. That's also a pretty great movie. The little paper fortune teller in Mr. Clark's class. Did you spot that?
I remember those, yeah.
So I know we had them whenever I was in school. Did you have them as well? Did they carry on when you were in school too?
Yeah, we still had them. Those were pretty cool.
Yeah, they were totally fun. I mean, we would do those in class and get in trouble all the time. We had them outside at recess. Those were just the best. So that totally took me back. I bet they don't do that anymore. I don't know. I'm not sitting in classrooms. I bet kids aren't doing that anymore, but they're missing out because that was fun. Talked about Paul Reiser, talked about the gate not going away, and of course we talked a little bit about earlier the Mr. Mom, the movie that was giving Bob the Brain a hard time about loving that movie, but I liked it too. I'm a huge Michael Keaton fan, and I really liked him. So that was I love seeing that movie in this show as well. That was super fun. That's all my notes.
Nice, good notes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we covered that pretty well. I feel good about that.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a great episode. Great. I mean, it's going to be tough for me to wait week to week. I'm sure a lot of people are probably, binging the whole thing, but yeah, just, keep bouncing back to us as we see it one episode at a time. We kind of relish it. We don't binge it. We just, take a little bit of a time.
Yeah, we're just gonna pretend it's like Game of Thrones or Walking Dead when it's on air and you're having to wait that week for that new episode to come out. So I'll probably go back and watch the first one again to try and take in more of it. Because normally I do watch it twice before we record, so I can just watch it as a fan, and then I'll watch it again and take all my notes and do like my top five and stuff. So I only got to watch it once since it was just released today, and we watched it and jumped into record. So we're probably, or I know I'm probably missing some things, but I thought it was awesome. I'm definitely going to be watching it again, and I might jump in early and watch the second one early, but I'm going to stick to the week by week. This is going to be tough for me. I watched the first season the first time around when it came out in a day, so I don't know how I'm going to hold back because I'm dying to see what happens next. It's going to be tough, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it somehow. Someone's just going to have to take my Netflix away. Change my password so I don't have access for a week.
That should be a setting on you can't binge, like anti-binge mode.
Right. How do we turn that off? I don't know how to reverse that. Okay, I think that was super awesome. Some really good stuff. So we're ready to jump into the news.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and start the first one?
All right, so the first one comes from The Hollywood Reporter. So Beyond Stranger Things will debut on the streamer October 27th, the same day as Stranger Things 2 releases. Netflix Stranger Things becomes the latest series to get the after-show treatment. The streaming giant is launching Beyond Stranger Things, a post-show rehash for the sci-fi phenomenon that debuted in 2016. Hosted by writer, producer, actor, and superfan Jim Rash, after the show promises to explore the inspiration for the series, tell behind-the-scenes stories, and analyze every aspect of the second season, including answering all the burning questions. All 7 episodes will be available to watch on October 27th, the same day Stranger Things 2 is released on the streaming platform. However, viewers will be advised not to start watching Beyond Stranger Things until after they have finished watching the entire new season of the drama, as there will no doubt be major spoilers along the way. Unlike the genre's other after shows, which air installments following each episode, Netflix iteration will automatically play for the viewers completing the final episode of Stranger Things 2. Beyond Stranger Things marks the streaming service's first foray into after-show programming on its platform and is being considered a Netflix original series. It's produced by Embassy Row, the producer company behind one of the many successful after-shows on the air, Talking Dead, along with several other unscripted post-show series. Michael Davis and Jen Kelly Patton serve as executive producers on the forthcoming talk show, with Patrick Dooley, is it Doody? That's a bad last name.
That's bad.
As a supervising producer. Guests on the after show will include creators Ross and Matt Duffer and executive producer and director Sean Levy, along with Stranger Things many stars. Among the cast members making an appearance is Millie Bobby Brown, Sean Astin, Lillian Bertheson, I'm terrible with names, Natalie Dyer, Brett Gelman, David Harbour, Randy Havens, Charlie Heaton, Joe Carey, Gatton Matazzaro, Caleb McCollin, Decree Montgomery, Paul Reiser, Noah Schnapp, Sadie Sink, and Finn Wolfhard. Whew. Stranger Things is simply the latest series to get the after-show treatment. AMC has done so most notably with Chris Hardwick's hosted Talking Dead, and then followed up with Hardwick hosted Talking Bad and Talking Saul for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, respectively.
That's interesting that they're having this after show, similar to like they do with Talking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. And why weren't we asked to host that, Sean?
I know, we could have done a good job with it.
We have totally done a great job with that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's because they already booked Jim Ross before we got there, before we started our podcast. So maybe season 3 they'll get us.
Yeah, well, they would be lucky to have us. But yeah, check that out. I think I'm going to check it out after, like they said, be forewarned to not watch until you've already watched it, because I guess there will be some spoilers. But I think I'll be checking that out. But definitely listen to our podcast first and then go watch this.
Yeah, we're kind of like, we're probably the better talking strange.
Yeah, because we are strange. So yeah, I found that.
Indeed.
Yeah, we are very strange indeed. Good point. The next one's from Entertainment Weekly. So they've made a list of 8 movies that you need to watch before binging Stranger Things 2. This might come in a little bit late because some of you may have already, if you watched it whenever it was released at 3 a.m. At what is it, Pacific time or whatever it was, you may have already finished this before listening to our episode here. But here are 8 movies you need to watch before binging Stranger Things 2. So, series creators Ross and Matt Duffer are huge film buffs and pay homage to many classic movies in the second installment of their Netflix hit. So, the first one on the list is Aliens from 1986. So, I talked a little bit about that one. So, this was James Cameron's space saga, influenced the Duffer brothers, particularly in their casting of star Paul Reiser as the enigmatic Dr. Owens. Is he like Aliens' Burke, or is he just a nice dude? Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. So the Duffer brothers are huge Spielberg fans, so naturally this classic film comes into play, particularly in a specific shot of Will looking out his door at the beginning of the season. Yeah, that was a definite throwback there. The Karate Kid, also from 1984. So Stranger Things is set during Halloween in 1984, as is a portion of this iconic drama.
Nice.
Yeah. Ghostbusters, also from 1984. The core group of kids in Things dresses up like these ghoul hunters for Halloween. The Duffers had to get permission from Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd to use these costumes.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Gremlins, also released in 1984. There's a Duffers homage to the Joe Dante horror flick, and I'm not going to tell you what it was. I saw it, but I'm not going to tell you guys. You wait for it, because it didn't happen yet in this first episode. Jurassic Park from 1993. So obviously not an 80s movie, but Jurassic Park still worked its way into Things Part 2. Why we're saying Jurassic Park is like the scene in the kitchen with the raptors, explains Ross. Our favorite stuff is where you're just glimpsing a monster. If you can do it with a sound or a shadow, we always try and do it because we think it's more effective. I totally agree. It's
I
like
thought the
Jaws.
guys... Yeah, Jaws, you don't see the shark until the end. I like, too, the guy that was sitting there listening to the radio at the very end at the facility.
Yeah.
When all the alarms and stuff were going off. He reminded me of the computer scientist from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, was it Samuel Jackson?
No, the Newman guy.
Oh, yeah, Newman. Yeah, he did remind me of him, and yeah, that thing lit up like Joyce's Christmas lights. That was not a good thing. Another movie on the list was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, also from 1984. Love this one. The second indie film is a pivotal influence in the second installment of Things, says Ross Duffer. We've got a soft spot for Temple of Doom. As do I. The last one on the list is Escape from New York from 1981. The Duffer brothers were inspired by both the look and the score of this John Carpenter cult classic. So if you haven't seen any of those already, you should check those out. It will definitely get you in the kind of give you in that vibe for Stranger Things 2.
All right, so the Hollywood Reporter is our last story. So seismic things are happening within Hawkins, Indiana. The small town at the heart of Stranger Things, the Netflix series created by the twin brothers Matt and Ross Duffer, is about to grow exponentially in size and scope. The coming season of the thriller, which takes place in a slice of Middle America with a healthy helping of 1980s nostalgia, stands ready to flesh out the expansion world of the Upside Down and the Demogorgon contained within it when it drops Friday. Once again, leaning on a bevy of iconic cinematic experiences as inspired for the road ahead. Number 1 on the inspiration call sheet, James Cameron's Alien, a film referenced at numerous points throughout Season 2 in both subtle and overt ways, the most obvious of which is the casting of Paul Reiser as the new Hawkins scientist named Dr. Owens. We talked about Aliens because we were looking at the most successful sequels of all time, and Aliens is arguably one of the most successful sequels, Matt Duffer tells The Hollywood Reporter about putting the season together. I love that people argue over whether Alien or Aliens is better, and I've changed my mind 100 times. It takes a lot of feeling and a lot of what worked about Alien, and then James Cameron did this amazing pivot almost into another genre. He expanded the scope and made it feel the same, but also very different. When you're looking at where the bar is, I always go to Aliens. Naturally, we want to give a couple of nods to it. For his part, executive producer Shawn Levy, who also directs 2 episodes this season, fresh on the heels of scoring his first Oscar nomination earlier this year as a producer on director Dennis something or another's Arrival, explains that the Aliens homage are more than just winks and nods from the Duffers to the film they hold in high regard. Aliens is one we evoke the most, but it fits alongside Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and The Empire Strikes Back as sequels that manage to honor the first iteration and then take shit to the next level, says Levy about the mission statement for the season. That was definitely the goal. Aliens exponentially grows the threat level, and we very much wanted to do that. We can get into the specific aliens references once season 2 drops in entirely, and stay frosty because there are many aliens references indeed, no question about it. But without getting into spoiler territory, here's one way the two properties connect: the fact that a resilient child in over their head is at the heart of the tale. In Aliens, the story largely centers on Rebecca Newt Jordan, the lone survivor of an alien assault on her family's colony. In Stranger Things, several different kids fill a similar role. Take your pick from characters ranging from Finn Wolfhard's Mike Wheeler to Millie Bobby Brown's 11. But there's one child actor stepping out of the shadows of season 1 and firmly into the light: Will Byers, the young boy who disappeared into the Upside Down, fueled all the action of season 1. Once again, we will find himself at the vortex of the Stranger Things storm, but in a much more active capacity. In my opinion, if season 2 belongs to anyone, it is the season of the Schnapp, says Levy. When we cast Noah in season 1, we knew that this kid was special. But we also knew this kid was going to be sparingly used all season 1, but we cast him anyway because we knew his moment was coming in season 2. Noah steps in as dramatically this season as we expected, but much more brilliantly than we hoped. He's able to, like a light switch, toggle into these traumatic and extreme scenes. It's like we bought a Ferrari and kept it in the garage for an entire season, and finally with season 2, we get to let the Ferrari out onto the open road. That's funny. Yeah, that's good news.
awesome.
Like, I'm excited for that. Like, I really want to see that Will character come to light.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see more of him. I think he's got a lot of talent, so I'm interested to see more Will. That's for sure, and to get to see him more interact with the boys, because we only got a short piece of that in the first season on episode 1 before Will disappeared. That relationship. So I'm anxious to see them all together. Great news, great news. So we've got some letters from the Upside Down, and this is some listener feedback that we've got. So keep it coming, guys. We really, really love reading these. The first one that we have is from Robin Young Sanders. Says, really, really enjoyed your coverage of season 1. I was stoked to find out that I wasn't the only one to like Mr. Clark. I laughed so hard listening to Shawn admit that he was starting to like Steve the D. And because of you two, I now always refer to Steve as Steve the D and Ted as fucking Ted. LOL.
That's awesome. Holly Robin Spike. So been enjoying the show. Was great to listen to as I worked on my Joyce Byers costume for a burlesque act I am doing this Saturday. Can't wait for season 2. Awesome, Holly. I guess if you want to share some of those, that'd be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see some more pictures of that. She shared a really great, obviously our listeners can't see it, but it was, I'll try and get it posted on our page. I was having some issues getting it posted, so don't think that I didn't see it. She had a really great, you can see the drawback piece of just real close. It was the alphabet that Joyce had on her wall last season with the Christmas lights was what her costume was.
Oh,
Or
that's
at least that
awesome.
was part of it anyway. So share some more pictures, Holly. We'd love to see them. It's super cool. We got an email that was really great. This is from Eric Lloyd. He says, hey guys, I started listening this week, which is the week of season 2 premiere. You've got a great thing going. Please keep this podcast going. Shawn and Rima's banter inside is extremely well done. Also, if you're needing more Stranger Things-esque stuff, you guys should check out the artist, The Alphabet Zero, if you haven't already. He's written a song about Eleven and Will that's a perfect fit for the feel of the soundtrack and show. It's called Friends Don't Lie, and I can't stop listening. Take care. Cool, Eric. Thanks for that. We'll check it out.
Yeah, that seems pretty cool. I like the title.
Yeah, I like that too. That was such a strong theme in the last season. I'm sure we'll probably see. I would like to see it come, kind of come back and make it its way back around in the season. But that was certainly big last season. Was Friends Don't Lie. So thanks everyone for the feedback. We really enjoy. I love reading the emails. I love getting listener feedback. We recorded this so quick that we didn't allow anyone time to give feedback on this particular episode because we watched it and then recorded, and everyone's kind of watching at different times. So I don't have anything specific. But if you want to write in any comments about this episode or any episode, we'll read it and definitely pay attention to it. So thanks everyone.
Yep, thanks everybody. So Rima and I will be taking a week off for Walker Stalker Con, and I will be strange indeeding it up on a beach in Mexico. So hopefully, like I said,
Nice.
I'm not in too much of a self-induced upside down, but we'll see. But we'll be back on November 9th and covering the second episode from season 2 titled Chapter 2, Trick or Treat, Freak. As of right now, there's no description available at this time, but I mean, just off this first one, I'm super excited for it. So
I don't even need a description. I don't really care what the descriptions are because I'm gonna watch no matter what. It's gonna kill me not to be jumping so far ahead. But yeah, just as a reminder, everyone, I'll try and keep posting as a reminder because I know everybody's probably going to be watching this show and wanting to maybe hear something on a podcast and what we have to say about it, or and we appreciate you doing so. But yep. My plan or my trip has been planned for a year. I know Sean's had his at least planned for a year, so we appreciate the patience. And I think we're going to need the recovery. I might not be spending as much time in Mexico as you, but I know from any Walker Stalker Con that I go to, especially because this one's Atlanta, I'm going to need some recovery time as well. And hopefully you don't get lost on that beach in Mexico. So we can come back and record on episode 2. So we're super excited for you to travel to Hawkins, Indiana with us. And until then, you can follow us on Twitter at StrangeTcast.
you can like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/strangertcast.
And you can email us at strangerthingscastpod@gmail.com. And you can also find us on the TV Time app.
You can find Strange Indeed and a bunch of other great podcasts like Under the Comic Covers at podcastica.com. Go out and leave a review for Strange Indeed or any of the other great Podcastica podcasts on Apple Podcast.
Yes, there's some awesome ones out there. Check them out. Also, be sure to check out Shawn and his other podcast.
Yeah.
The Language of Bromance comes out every Sunday.
And this Sunday, if you like Halloween, it's our special Broloween episode.
Yes.
All right, and also just a reminder, go to freshly.com and helps one of the sponsors of our episode, and you can choose your meal from one of the weeks of the rotating menu, and they send it to you in a refrigerated box. And just to remember, the promo code is STRANGE, and it gives our listeners 2 weeks of chef-cooked dinners for $40 off. So you get $20 off your first order and $20 off your second.
Yum.
All right, well, that's our show, Episode 9, Chapter 1, Mad Max.
Until next time, I'm Rima.
And I'm Shawn.
And Robin Young Sanders is strange indeed.
We know you've had a hard year, Michael, but we've been patient. This isn't strike 1. This isn't even strike 3.
It's strike 20. You're on the bench, son. And if I'd been my coach, be lucky to still be on the team.
UPSIDE, we're in the upside down, and we're going to eat everybody.